Hello, and welcome to the Video Creator Show, where we talk the juicy details of how to succeed on YouTube. And what better way to do that than to talk directly to people who have done it? Today, I'm talking with Coach Lee. He is a TED educator on the science of relationships and has been interviewed by major media, including the New York Times, USA Today, The Today Show, New York Post, Men's Health, LA Business Journal, Cosmopolitan, Daily Mail, and it goes on and on and on. Point is, he's a big deal. He knows lots about relationships, how to help people become more confident, more attractive, and that is very important. But before we get into that, the Video Creator Show, as you probably know, is brought to you by VidChops.com, an editing service that helps take the burden of editing off your back. Check out VidChops.com to see how you can save yourself tons of time and energy while taking your YouTube channel to the next level. All right, here I am today with Coach Lee, the relationship expert, the dating coach. How you doing today, Lee?
Great, I'm doing terrific, man. Beautiful day.
That's what
the
I like
sun
to
is
hear.
shining.
Oh, that's always good. It is August, so I would hope so. You never know. But yeah, so looking at your channel, I always do a deep dive before talking to people. You have done very well on YouTube. You have over 254,000 subscribers. You have videos with millions of views, several of them. And so what do you think it is, first of all, that is so important about having a dating coach or a confidence coach? Like, what is it about what you do that makes why is your job important?
Well, with a lot of things in life, we really value experience. So, for example, today I got a haircut and I didn't go to somebody who said, I've been looking at people's heads and I think I can do this. I went to somebody who had cut a lot of hair, and this particular woman has been cutting hair for like 30 or 40 years. So she knows what she's doing and she's seen a lot of things. That's the really basic version of why a relationship coach matters, because so many times, especially back when I used to do one-on-one individual coaching sessions, which now I have a coaching staff who does that, but I would hear people say, well, my aunt told me this, my buddy told me this, my friend told me this, and that was the advice they got for their relationship, just something a friend told them, which we really wouldn't use for anything else in life that we really took seriously. Your car, you don't just say, hey, you drive cars some, will you fix my car, see if you can? Same thing with medical things. You wouldn't just go ask your aunt what she thought unless she had those letters by her name that say she studied this and she's seen a lot. And so the same is true of the relationship coach, not necessarily because we're smarter than you, but because we've seen so much and we've seen so many situations, and we can begin to predict human behavior, at least to some degree, and we can help you see what's going on in their head and in their heart that maybe have them reacting a certain way, which really helps you to think about it and see the reality of the situation. So think about that before you just take advice from your Uncle Rex.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I guess when you take advice from just people in your life, you never really know, like, if their advice is kind of tainted by some bad experiences they've had, or they sort of have patterns that they fall into that has corrupted their idea of what a healthy relationship looks like. And, as you said, like we were talking a bit before this, you clearly have a good relationship. You're doing well in that whole department. So you seem like the type of guy who you would want to come to for this advice. And you've had your YouTube channel for about 4 years. Was your YouTube channel the beginning of this, or have you, what were you doing in this department before YouTube?
Well, I was with another organization. This is my third one now, and it's my own, but I started with an organization back somewhere around the year 2000, and they actually did marriage coaching. It was actually 1999. They did marriage coaching. And I was an internet marketer, and I was a writer for them. But one of their marriage coaches, who was a terrific human being, and I really looked up to him and had a lot of wonderful conversations with him, he developed a terminal illness and had to resign. And so they asked me, because I was so familiar with the material, because I had been traveling with the the president of the company and watching and listening to his workshops and learning. And so they said, well, you just fill in for 2 weeks until we hire a coach. We're going to have to hire a credentialed coach. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I did. And a month went by, a month and a half, and they said, just a little bit longer. So eventually they said, would you just like to go get some certifications and some trainings and do this full time? And so I agreed. And I went from there to another organization. There was basically a split. And so some of us went one way and some of us went another way. And then about 4 years ago, maybe closer to 3, I went on my own, and that's about when the YouTube channel got going. And so it was an extension of what I was doing, but because I didn't have a non-compete clause anymore, especially on the topic of marriage, I was doing a lot of the dating stuff, but couldn't talk about marriage. I was free to do that. And so now I'm free and it's mine. And so I have a lot more flexibility and freedom, and the people on my team do as well.
Right on. So when you were like you said you started this in the late 90s, so you're with this company, you're in the beginning stages of this. Can you fill us in like on that transition when you got the certifications, and like how do you go from just kind of working with this company, getting certifications, to starting to have like a real audience?
Well, I did a few videos and they did pretty well, especially for a new channel. And I didn't know that at the time. I kind of thought maybe that was normal. And I look back at some of the production quality and I'm embarrassed of it, but some of those videos have so many views and still have comments coming in where people get a lot out of them. And so I leave them. I've taken some down and I've redone them, or just haven't had a chance to redo them yet. But there was one that in particular that blew up, and it's actually called What Your Ex Is Thinking During No Contact. That's the name of the video. And I woke up one day and it was just, the views were piling up. Woke up the next day and they had even increased at a greater rate. And I had never seen one of my videos do like this. And so then, to make it even better, that's when Cosmopolitan wanted to interview me about the topic of that video. They had found that video. And so that was a big help too. But that one video really seemed to give me a lot of momentum. And so I started doing other videos as quickly as I could get them out, which wasn't very fast. I was probably doing 2, maybe on a really good week doing 3. But most weeks it was 2. And I know some people really try to do more than that. And that's great, but that's about all I could do because I was doing coaching calls then. I didn't have a staff who helped me. It was just me. So it was sort of an earlier success as far as YouTube goes, and I had the ability at least to monetize, and wasn't even really aware of it for several months because I didn't really understand all that. I was just doing videos to try to help people and to book coaching calls. I thought, if I can help someone, then they might want to book a coaching call with me to see how else I can help. So it was sort of a naive way to start a channel, but it did work well, and some of those old videos are gone and will never see the light of day again. But some of them are still there, and you can get a look at me with longer hair 4 years ago and probably 10 pounds lighter as well.
Well, so your strategy was just kind of to post videos that you thought were pertinent, and obviously you had been doing coaching calls and you'd been in this space for a long time before you even started making videos. So you surely had a really good idea of what was important. You have all these calls, people are constantly talking to you about their relationship problems or their inability to have a relationship. And I mean, in this case, what your ex is thinking during no contact. Did you, like, knowing that this video took off as much as it did you feel like that reflected accurately to what people were asking you a lot on these phone calls?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons I did the video, because people kept saying, well, what's going on in their head right now? What's in their mind? What are they thinking? And that was such a recurring theme. They wanted to know where their ex was at in this entire thing. And so finally I just thought, oh, that sounds like a good video topic. And so I did it. I also noticed that it seems like when people are looking for a niche, someone's just wanting to do a YouTube channel, that this has now become a popular niche to get into. When I first started, there weren't that many people doing it. And the people who were doing it, with one exception, whose name I won't mention, but I felt that these people had some good experience, that it made sense for them to talk about this stuff. It wasn't just somebody saying, I'm looking for a niche to get into and I'll just start doing some videos from some content I found somewhere else. That's not what I suggest, and that's not how I did it. I have had multiple certifications and trainings that I've done. And so I think that that's important, because if you want to do something real and you want to do interviews where people ask you questions and you can't just go research and see what other people say, but also just because there's a trust factor, and that's really important to me. And one of the things I think when someone's hurting, which is what I'm dealing with in this situation, is that someone is hurting and they're wanting to feel like they can trust someone to tell them how maybe they could give themselves a good chance to redeem the situation, to reunite with this person. I was committed to relating to them and to speaking to them with dignity and with empathy. So, for example, I've watched some of the channels that are new on this topic, and they will just copy the titles of my videos and a few other people. I mean, one particular channel I found, in order, they copied every video title the last 40 I did, and they would do them. Of course, their videos had like 200 views, 300 views, 17. They weren't doing as well. And part of the reason, in my opinion, is because they tried to do it like an infomercial. I think they looked at my videos and they thought, it's just him and he's just talking. He doesn't talk really fast. And so they tried to do it, and they tried to show all this energy and move their hands a lot and just do all these things, throw screens in and stuff like that, which that works great for some channels. But I really wanted to put myself in the position of the viewer who's hurting, who's panicked. And I imagine someone who's having a threatening health condition and they are worried about it. You may think that, well, high energy is the way to go on YouTube because everybody has ADD and we're trying to keep them interested. But this person, how does that impact them? Are they going to say, welcome to my video, I'm going to tell you how you can cure your cancer today. Woo! What do you really think they're going to do? Seriously, how ridiculous is that? Out of touch. And so I've had some people who have, especially early on, they said, man, you need to talk faster. Because I don't talk that quickly. I think about things before I say them. And I was committed early on. I thought, a lot of people treat it like they're speaking to this big audience and they're going to, almost as though they're running out on stage with their hands up, and they're expecting all this applause and energy. And I thought, I'm going to do it like a coaching call. I remember thinking that thought 4 years ago because I was like, how am I going to do this? I thought, I'm going to pretend that this is a person who's come to me and they've asked me this question, the title of my video. For example, what is your ex thinking during no contact? They've said to me, Coach Lee, what is my ex thinking during no contact? Well, I'm doing this thing I'm supposed to be doing. They've broken up with me, but what are they thinking? So I just wanted to talk to a person one-on-one, because that's really who you're talking to. You're talking to one person at a time. You're not speaking to a crowd of thousands. You're speaking to one person. So since I've been able to watch the industry, and I keep up with some of my competitors, and that's a criticism I have, is that I feel like they come across as fake sometimes. They come across that they think that they've got to have high energy, because we hear that a lot. Get your energy up, get your energy up. And that works sometimes. But what if it's a serious topic or a serious statement? Do you really want to say something like, maybe your best bet is to try to move on? Do you want to say that like, maybe your best bet is to try to move on? It's ridiculous. But people think that that's how you're supposed to do it because they think it's supposed to be so high energy, and every 1.5 seconds I've got to change the frame. And I think it actually causes more anxiety and panic in people. And so that's where, in a lot of ways, I have the advantage, because I'm not rushing myself. And the other person, I think, appreciates being able to stay in the moment with me instead of feeling like a lot of other videos where they just see how quickly they can speak. And I saw one the other day of one of my competitors, and I saw the title, their title versus my title, where they had done the exact same title, but theirs had like 1/10 of the views. And I was just curious. I'm not trying to be arrogant here. I do like to analyze things. So I just opened up that video to look at it. And it was a female, and the way she started the video was she bounced. So if you're not watching, you can't really see me do this, but if you are watching, check this out. So she did something like this. She went, I'm going to tell you, like she did this bounce. And the first thing I thought is she doesn't trust herself. She doesn't believe that what she's going to say is valuable enough. And so she feels like she has to add something to it to keep the person watching. And I may be dead wrong, but that's what it felt like. And so if you try to put yourself in your viewer's position, you may be in an industry, in a niche, where someone wants that fast-paced stuff. I saw a guy the other day who he does videos on how to grow subscribers on YouTube and followers on Instagram. And this guy was speaking incredibly fast, almost like that Micro Machines guy from the 80s. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but there was a guy in the 80s, and you should YouTube him, the Micro Machines guy. And he would do these commercials where he spoke incredibly fast because that's what he was known for. And he would enter these competitions to see how quickly he could read things. And so that he would be in a race against other people. And this guy was like the world champion. And they thought it would be different to do that. And it was. It was fascinating to watch him. But that works for something like how to build your YouTube channel. Because there's not a seriousness to it. There's not a panic on the other side of the screen. There's not sorrow on the other side of the screen. And there's not sadness on the other side of the screen. Usually it's somebody who's optimistic, they're a go-getter, and you're providing information that can help them. But when it's someone who's hurting, who's distraught, see, that's what I'm saying. Just think of the person who's watching your video. It may make all the sense in the world for you to speak quickly, but for the people I'm seeing who pop up in this niche of relationship coaching, they seem to think, at least some of them, that they've got to talk really fast and they've got to make it into some exciting infomercial with blinking lights and whatever else. And I think people don't buy it. I think they feel offended that that they would be treated that way when they're hurting and they're panicked. You know, it's like, get the smile off your face for a minute. And people even joke about that in the comments, because I'll smile sometimes and people will say in the comments, wow, he really does smile. Like, I didn't think he did. I do, but I just don't feel like it makes sense when I'm telling someone whose heart is broken some things and giving them a bit of advice. If I have this big, toothy, ridiculous used car salesman grin on my face, I don't think that that's fitting the moment. It seems like I would be out of touch. It's like if someone was to go to an oncologist and he walks in and he's like, hey, I'm going to talk to you about your tumor today. And he's got this big goofy smile. I think a lot of people would be furious. You know, like you need to get on another industry. You don't get it. So I try to really honor the person watching and put myself in their place. That doesn't mean I don't smile sometimes and I don't use humor sometimes, but most of it is a serious conversation. And so using a general rule with YouTube saying it should always be high energy, you should always talk fast, and you should always be happy and have a big smile on your face, in my opinion, is wrong. And it's not just a little bit wrong. It's like your channel won't get off the ground wrong if you get your industry wrong in terms of the attitude that you have and you project.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that is sage advice, because I think the high energy vibe can work if you are that person. And as you said, if it fits the industry that they're in or the space that they're in. So my channel, Treesicle, is a video game channel. And the first videos that we made on there that started doing well were essentially the opposite of your videos. You know, you're like a sincere guy saying sincere things into the camera, trying to help the person on the other end. And, you know, I did make these videos with the intention of helping people in terms of entertaining them or making them feel better, telling them something they didn't know, things like that. But my voice was, it was pretty fake, you know? I was trying to just, like, keep them going, and there was lots of, like, fancy editing on the screen. But that was the show, you know? And it worked, and it did very well. But I think with your space, as you said quite eloquently, it's just a different thing. And when you are starting a channel, you should always be aware of who you're talking to and what your goal is. You know, my goal was to be kind of silly and ridiculous and philosophical all at the same time with some fancy editing and video game footage. And kind of that whole collection of things worked well together. But with, I think, your style of video where you're just kind of speaking to the camera and speaking from the heart, and even the business behind your YouTube channel where you're talking to people on the phone or, Zoom or whatever it is, you're connecting with them as a person for the duration of that call. And if you're putting out this attitude of, hey guys, like and subscribe my zany YouTube channel, it's like, that isn't, that's just, it's the wrong vibe. So, as far as how to grow a YouTube channel, the advice here is clear. It's just be true to what you are doing and be honest about it. And I would say, especially if you're in a personal space like this, it's good to be personal. If you happen to be a high energy, kind of peppy person, then by all means be that person. But I think if you're trying too hard, people are going to notice. They just will.
Right. And like I said, if it's a topic, if it's a sports channel, a buddy and I have been toying with the idea of doing a sports channel. We've got some test videos where we've kind of discussed some things, and it's a different side of me. But that's also a very different topic. It's a lighthearted topic. It's an energetic topic. It's fun. Okay. And to be honest with you, some of my videos are not a lot of fun because when you're talking about heartbreak and you're talking about, will this person come back? And I know what these people are going through. And I saw another guy recently, they have probably maybe as many as 10 times the number of videos that I have. And yet I have far more subscribers, and the video numbers that I do are much higher. I'm not saying that to brag, I'm simply being analytical. And as I'm watching their video on this topic, because I'm curious what they have to say, I noticed that the guy doing it, he's trying to do these things with his voice, and I can tell he's convinced he's got to do something different. He's got to push the tone of his voice lower, and he's got to raise it at certain times, or he's got to continue his sentence longer than he should, or he's got to just do some kind of grand gesture at a certain point in the sentence. And the problem is that, in my opinion, the way I do this, and I think it works for this industry. So again, if this is not your industry, then just see this as a learning experience and not as something you should apply. But if I feel like I get in front of the camera and I say, okay, it's time to do a video, and I'm changing something about me, that's fake. And I cannot stand to feel like the other person is being fake. It just makes me feel like I want to back away from them. It's repulsive to me. And so when I sit in front of this camera, it's a lot like right now where I'm just talking to you. And so when I'm doing a video on a topic, I try to think of one person that I'm talking to, and I'm not trying to do anything special with my voice. And I know that for some people that sounds sacrilegious practically, because you've got to be different and you've got to go low here and high here, and you've got to talk fast. But I'm saying the person who's in my audience does not care at all that you can make your voice go low here and high here, and that you're speaking 4 words a second instead of 2. What they want is to feel like you can help them, and that at least in this moment, they can get a little bit of peace. And if you try to force something else, you're going to do the opposite. Plus, do you really want to get a coaching session with someone who seems fake? To me, I would not want to. And I think that most of the people in my audience appreciate that I'm trying to be honest in every video. I'm just trying to be Lee. I'm not trying to be Lee doing a video. I'm not trying to be on stage. It's not time to act or time to do a YouTube video or time to speak. It's just Lee, and I'm talking about something that I know. And I think it works really well, maybe with educational things. If it's a really boring topic, you may have to do the zany, like you said, the high energy and all that, just to keep people's attention. But if you've got their attention because of the seriousness of the topic, then I strongly encourage you to be conversational. And so there's other topics where you can approach it this way, but you need to know what your audience is feeling when they get to your video. And if they're feeling lighthearted, if they're looking for humor, like last night, I was just kind of scrolling YouTube and I found some comedian shows where they have comedians and all that. And of course, that's a totally different thing. I was looking for entertainment. I wanted to laugh. I was in a good mood. That's a totally different audience. When you're looking for something serious. When you're looking for serious help and serious answers, you don't want the other person to be fake and forcing something to try to make you watch longer. I think people want someone who's genuine and honest and just trying to give them good information and to be considerate of them. So if somebody was to say, why is your YouTube channel doing well? I think that's why, in my opinion. And so when I talk through with my staff what videos we want to do, I really focus on that. I'm going to be real and honest and genuine. I'm not going to put on an act. And we're going to keep this fairly simplistic as far as we have a great camera, we know a little bit about lighting, but I'm going to talk to one person. And so that's worked, and different things may work for different people, but as far as we're concerned right now, it's not broken, so we're not going to fix it, and we're just going to try to keep things the same, even as we approach maybe different topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so kind of shifting gears here, this being the Video Creator Show, do you have like an important piece of advice for growing a channel? And I don't mean that to sound generic, and you just gave a lot of really good advice about your sort of presentation to the camera, which in my opinion is probably the most important. You know, your stage presence, so to speak, should be authentic, and that's something I talk about a lot on this show. But like earlier, you mentioned you were posting like 2 to 3 videos a week, especially like in the early stages of the channel. You were saying you felt like that wasn't a lot of videos. In my opinion, that is a lot of videos. That's a lot of videos. Like you're nailing it. You're killing it. I would say even once a week is a good amount. But kind of from a business standpoint and growing a YouTube channel, what do you like besides your kind of authenticity and connecting with the person you're talking to? Do you feel like there was something else that you did right on YouTube that helped your success?
Yes, and I'll try to just focus on maybe the most powerful part of that, because there's several things, but in my opinion, the most important thing is that when I'm choosing a title, I'm trying to think of how people would word it, and I'm doing a lot of research on that title. So I'm going to YouTube and I'm typing it in to see what they fill in, because that tells me that people have actually typed this. And so there's been a lot of times where I find the subject first, and then I get the title from what people are typing in to look for that subject. And it's not like other people haven't said that, but in my opinion, that's probably the most important thing you could get right. You can do other things wrong, and as long as you are thinking of it in terms of what people are searching for, because that's the number one thing that YouTube is going to look for. And if you think about it that way and not just trying to come up with a poetic title, and I have done some consulting here and there, you know, businesses or people who I've known and who are friends of mine and have a YouTube channel will say, can you look at our channel and tell us what you think? And I'll go through and I'll look at videos and I'll look at the titles. And a lot of times the titles will be something that sounds poetic, it sounds kind of cool, but it's not something that's going to be searched for. So for example, what if they had a video called Of Mice and Men, which is the name of a book. But if it's not about that book, but that title could work in this situation, because maybe this video is about overcoming your fears of public speaking or social anxiety or athletic performance. If you title the video Of Mice and Men, it may communicate. People may look at the title and understand it, but very few people are going to see it, because how people use YouTube usually is they search for something or it shows up in their feed and on their homepage. And so you're cutting out more than half, because nobody's going to be searching for that title. And so not only are you not going to get many views up front, which will hurt your video long term, but you're also going to get fewer subscribers, which is going to hurt your next video. And if it's not clear and people do see the title, then they're not going to click on it, because that title, it does communicate to me and it might communicate to other people, but some people are going to see that and think, what are you talking about? I'm not trying to figure out how to help my pet mouse, They won't know what that means. And so that's one problem. And another problem is that if you want your video to get a lot of clicks, it needs to show up in other videos that are similar. And so that title really limits you to videos maybe that are about pets. And so it confuses YouTube. So you've got to think about those things when you're making a title. And that's just an example of a title that I thought of. But if you can stick with a lot of how-tos, if you're providing information that helps someone with a problem, how-tos are really good, or what ifs are really good. And if your channel is about entertainment, then it could be where you are real specific about maybe it's Mark McGuire's last home run, something like that, or college football's #1 for 2022. That way you're being really specific about what people might be typing in. And so, though there's a lot of things I could say, I think if you get that right, you get 60 or 70% of it, assuming your videos are good and people want to watch them. But that would be really high on my list, is the title, being careful and selecting a good title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've actually recently become aware of a strategy for making a title and marketing a video. You actually start with the title and the thumbnail, and then you make the video. And this is key because, so this is something that I didn't do for years. It was always the opposite, right? Me and my team, we'd make a video, we'd spend all these hours on it, work really hard on it, and then kind of the last hour before we're going to post the video, we're like, what are we going to call this video? Like, let's make a thumbnail. And that isn't really how you want to do it, because when you put all this time and energy into a video, you want to make sure you're actually marketing it well. Like, you could make the best video in the world, but if people aren't seeing it, if they're not drawn to want to click on it or tap on it, then, I mean, you kind of wasted a lot of time and energy. And sure, it's good you put it out there, but it's, it's the 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the work is the most important, and 80% of the work is not that important. And I'd say in that 20% is the title and the thumbnail. And if you aren't putting your focus there, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. And, you can make it work, but I think the key here is you don't want to feel rushed. You want to be able to have time where, like you were saying, you're kind of like searching things. So when does no contact start working? That's just a random video of yours that I pulled up here. You want to be able to kind of search that title, see, are other people talking about this? Like, is this actually something people care about? You want to get a good idea of, are you phrasing this well, or is your title too wordy? And sometimes this can take some time. Maybe you can ask somebody that like, does this look like a good title? You got any recommendations? Things like that. And you want to make sure that you're not rushed, especially if you have like a working title and then you start the video and you can kind of like stew on the title for a while, or the thumbnail. And you might get some inspiration of like, oh no, this is the best title. But because you started it early, you have had time to develop it. And maybe that sounds silly, like develop a title, you just come up with one, but it can be surprisingly difficult to name a video. You're essentially taking, like a lot of your videos are over 20 minutes. You're taking like 20 minutes of information and condensing it into a phrase. And that's it's kind of a big deal. So, I think this is great advice, and people should absolutely take seriously the title and thumbnail and not just kind of do it as an afterthought, even though I'm kind of a hypocrite about that. At least I was.
Yeah, I understand, and you're absolutely right. And one comparison I've used before when I've consulted with people is they will talk about how good their video is, and I'll watch it and I'll say, you're right, the content I think is good, and I think your presentation is good. And in their opinion and their frustration is, well, that's all it should take. But an example I'll give them is, what if you had a Da Vinci painting and it was in your basement and the lights were out and the doors were closed? Does that change the fact that the painting is a work of art, a priceless work of art? It does not. That painting quality is never in question. the skill and the unique talent of Da Vinci is never in question. But if nobody knows it's there and nobody can see it, then your view number is going to be very low. And so, like you said, 20% of your effort can get you 80% or more of results. And so it's not enough to say this video is good, because people have got to see it to know that it's good. So you've got to do the work of getting attention to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's all in marketing, and it's huge, it's key. Would highly recommend. So, in all of your years of being in this space, do you have like suggestions for how to monetize this well? So this is always kind of the side of YouTube that I think doesn't get talked about a lot. And clearly, you know, when you're speaking, you mean what you say, and this isn't just like a money-making scheme by any means. But it is important for people to be able to monetize their YouTube success if possible. You know, it gives you financial freedom. It's a good incentive to keep going. So like you have these coaching calls, you have ads on your videos. Are there other avenues that you've been able to kind of make this a thriving business?
Yes, we have online courses people pay to do, and we have assessments that are developed by other people, but they're developed by psychologists. For example, the temperament assessment, which is how you interact in relationships, how you interact with other people, and how to understand how they interact. And so basically you take this assessment and it's going to basically tell you a lot about yourself. So we have a lot of things like that. And I totally agree. You've got to make money or else you won't have time to put into this. The money is what allows me to stay on top of the research and to do the number of videos that I do. If I had to have a full-time job doing something else and then try to make videos on the side, I would do fewer videos. I would have less energy to do videos. And since I wouldn't be able to be full-time with the topic, I probably wouldn't be as helpful. And so I'm all about people making money and making as much money as they can. I think that that's great, and that we should support people who are doing that if we think they have a good product. But I think it's important to think more than just the ads on a channel, which, by the way, when I've looked at some of those that try to project what the ads are, they're really low, and I've heard other people say that too. So the ads itself, don't look at those and think, oh well, I'm not going to be able to make a lot of money because it looks like the ads are only this much per this number of views. Usually they are off by 4 or 5 times, as best I can tell, because I do have other friends in the industry, and I'll say, you know, this is what so-and-so, this website says you're making on the ads. What are you making? And it's almost always 4 or 5 times more than what that website's saying. So you can do a lot with ads, and that's an encouragement to do videos, and to do videos over, 8 minutes, I believe, that you have to do to be able to put an ad in there. And people should, right, the mid-roll. Yeah, you can still have before and after ads, but I think that people understand that on YouTube, and that this guy who's doing this video, this is his full time, or he's trying to make it his full time, or she's trying to make it her full time. And so they understand that the ads pay for the channel, just like when we watch TV and they take a commercial break. They've got a staff of people to pay, and they've got lots of expenses to pay. So, and they want to make a little bit of money too. So people understand that. So don't be afraid of that. I know when I first started, I didn't want to put commercials in the videos because I thought it would take away from it. But I realized if we don't make the money we need to make, we're not going to be able to make these videos anyway. So that's one thing. And then think of how you can, if you have a good following, then you can also tell them about this product that's helpful to whatever they're looking for, or that is about your channel. And you can refer them to that. So don't just think that the ads are the only way you can make money on your channel. Even before you're monetized on YouTube, you can have a product to refer people to, even if it's just a coaching call or a course that you make, or a PDF. You can make a little ebook, 20, 30 pages. If it's helpful, people pay $4 or $5 for it. So you can do other things than just the monetization on YouTube, but do the monetization on YouTube as soon as you can, and you'll be able to make better products because you'll be paid higher, which is what we do when someone's good at their job. So I like how that's going with YouTube, as far as they're continuing to make sure they're taking care of their creators and rewarding the creators who have a lot of people who get a lot out of them.
Mm-hmm. For real. And I'm glad that you went the route of making courses as well, or having like a PDF people can download, because the advantage of this, and this is something I always like to tell people, is that's one of the things where you do the work and then it's there. And you can just kind of like, you can pitch it in your videos, even like one sentence will do, like, hey, this thing I'm talking about right now is a bit relevant to this course that I made, and you can go check it out here. And that's all it takes to advertise that now. Whereas if you're relying on YouTube ads for your income, or you're relying on sponsorships, every time you have to put in a certain amount of work, right? In order to get ads on a video, you have to make a video. In order to have a sponsorship, you have to make the sponsorship, and you have to make the video to put the sponsorship on. Whereas the course is more passive income. If you're able to create something and then just kind of sell it passively, this is going to save you a lot of time and energy. And it's ultimately just a great use of time. And also, I noticed that if you have a personal connection with your audience, I noticed that these courses or information, or really anything, it could be merchandise even, that sells a lot better than if you're kind of this, fake, inauthentic, like kind of
Exactly.
a show. And so it kind of, I think if you go this route, I don't want to say it like forces you to be authentic, but I think it ties into authenticity well, and you should always be building a YouTube channel around that, unless you are really good at just kind of making a show with lots of fancy bells and whistles. But I think a lot of people, like, that takes a lot of resources to make a show like that. It's easier to just kind of speak from the heart, and I think it does well too.
Right. And one thing that I forgot to mention is now we have YouTube Thanks, where people can just click right there under your video and give you a tip. Basically, they can leave you some money. And so even if you're thinking, well, I'm not a big channel, so I'm limited, sometimes people will leave $100 tips, $200, $300, because they got a lot out of something. So that's where, if you're providing a valuable service and people feel grateful, then they reward you that way. So that's another thing to think about. And it goes back to, if you're putting on a show and you sound fake, I don't think people want to thank you as much. I think they feel like maybe your motives are not in a great place. So that's something to think about as well.
Mm-hmm. And also, maybe they don't even distrust your motives. They just kind of don't see you as a person. You're just kind of an entertainer. You're sort of
a talking head.
Yeah, exactly. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think from, ironically, a monetization...
Depends on the industry.
Yeah, like from a monetization standpoint, people want to give people money. They don't want to give a show money. It's just it's easier when you feel connected to somebody and they're real. I found, like, the videos where I was speaking more from the heart and I was less like showman like. Those were the ones where people would like come into our live streams and then start donating and kind of just be more engaged. They would be much more engaged. I think it saves you effort too. Instead of like putting on this mask, it takes a lot of energy to be fake, ironically. Like, I remember, in college, I'm kind of like introverted by nature. I remember in college, I was like, oh, I want to be like these really extroverted people. They seem really cool. And so I remember kind of going to a few parties, and it was never like terrible or anything, but I was trying to be that guy. And I would come home just like exhausted, I was like, oh my God, I was like trying so hard to talk a lot. And, maybe I made some connections doing that, but ultimately it's draining to not be you. It's like you have to think about everything you say versus just kind of saying it. Because you're trying to, is this what my persona would say versus just blah.
You nailed it. It's much more difficult. And that's one of the things someone asked me. This is a friend who's had a lot of difficulty with YouTube. And I looked at her channel, and I wasn't going to say to her, I don't think you're being yourself. I think you're kind of putting on. But she definitely was. It's time to do a video. So I'm going to do these things differently. And I'm going to talk to you as though I would never talk to anyone who's a friend of mine. But, and it was like that. And I told her, I said, to me, all I have to do is be myself in front of the camera. Like, I don't have to figure out what, like you said, my persona would say. I don't have to figure out much at all. It's like I already know the material. So I can just be me. I can just be Lee talking. I don't have to do, and you said it well. To me, that would be exhausting. If I couldn't just have a conversation with the camera, that'd be pretty miserable. I wouldn't want to do videos because it would be so much more effort than to just be me. I don't have to figure anything out when I'm just being me. I already know how to be me. So I'm just like that song. They're going to put me in the movies. They're going to make a big star out of me. They're going to put me in the movies, and all I have to do is act naturally. And it's a I don't know if you heard that song or not. That might be before your time, but it's a cowboy, and he's singing, and it's from like the 40s or 50s, so it's before my time as well. But he's talking about how these Hollywood people came to him, and they saw him in his cowboy hat, and he's got his gun on his side, and they heard his Western slang, and he said, they want to put me in the movies, and I don't have to change a thing. I can just act naturally. And that's what they want. So think about it that way. You already know how to be you, so you can just act naturally. You don't have to put on, unless your channel warrants it, and you have to figure that out for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And I find YouTube has been, over the years, a really useful tool of kind of exploring myself and like how I want to present myself. I feel like talking to a camera and into a microphone has made me more comfortable in conversation. And if you're an extroverted person, maybe this isn't that big of a deal. But for me, it felt like I got a lot of confidence out of just filling the air, say something, anything. And by doing that, I kind of just learned to speak instead of like thinking about it a lot. So I invite people to essentially use YouTube as a way to explore yourself, feel yourself, and figure out, express, like figure out what it is you actually want to say. Because I think, from the time we're kids, we're kind of taught, like, you have to do this, people who are respected do this, they wear this, and, a certain amount of fitting in is important, but I think a lot of that can kind of round us off around the edges, and a lot of people don't have a place where they can just speak freely on a regular basis, and YouTube can be that space. And that's a powerful thing. And I've really felt that I'm a better person, like I'm a better version of myself because I was able to speak so much as a job, essentially. Because a lot of the times when we're speaking to people, it's different than, like, talking to a person is very different than talking to a camera. When you're talking to a camera, you kind of mentioned this earlier, you are talking to the person on the other side, but also
Right.
they're not seeing it yet. You're just filming this thing. And this is an opportunity for you to just kind of go. Like, just speak, just talk, say something, anything. And then ultimately, if you don't like it, you can kind of edit it out. You could argue that's inauthentic or whatever, but also I think it's empowering because you can say something, anything, and if you end up saying something, I don't know, you just you just say something horrible, just take it out, just like feel free to express yourself, and then you'll get better and better and better and better.
Right, and the longer your channel's on, the more likely people are going to search for the name of your channel or your name, like Coach Lee. When I first started the channel, people weren't typing for that, but now a large number of people just type in Coach Lee on YouTube just to see some other videos I have and things like that. And so if it's connected to a person, if your channel has a face behind it, that's really helpful too. A lot of people try to do a faceless channel, and I know that can work if that's what you want, but there is a benefit if it's based around a person or a face, even if you use a fake name for privacy. If people are able to search for it, it's another avenue where it's easy to find you, where it's easy for them to say, oh yeah, just go to YouTube and search Coach Lee, and you'll find my video. So that's something to think about too, is that if you are going after genuineness, then tying it to a person can be very helpful because people attach to that person.
Mm-hmm.
if you can connect it to a person, I suggest that you do. It's a lot easier for them to relate and to find you and to recommend you. Because if they have to remember the name of the video or the name of the channel, and if it's an organization name, that's harder to remember. But people, we tend to remember their names easier. And so if you could tie it to a person, that's great because people relate to that a lot better. They don't relate to robots or just um, pictures that come in and out of different things, stock photography and stock videos. Those are fine to use. And you can definitely be successful just using that for a channel. But if you can tie it to a person at all, I think it's another element that allows you to bring more people to your channel.
Totally agree. And if you can just be a guy and make videos like that, that is the simple, tried and true approach. And with that, I think we've approached the end of the interview here. We're about an hour in. And this is the point of the interview where I ask, why don't you tell people where they can find you? Obviously, your YouTube channel is Coach Lee, but tell them about your website. Anything else where you think it would be valuable for them to check you out?
I'm on Instagram at Real Coach Lee on Instagram. My website is myexbackcoach.com. Myexbackcoach.com, and you can see articles and videos and courses that we have for people who are wanting to improve relationships or wanting to start one or wanting to save a marriage, and or even just learn how you interact in relationships, because we do have that temperament assessment that I told you about, where people can take this pretty lengthy, detailed assessment, but it's fascinating to learn those things about yourself. So that's all at myexbackcoach.com.
Right on. And there you go. Go check them out. You will not be disappointed. I can promise you that. And with that, that is the end of this episode of the Video Creator Show. Don't forget, this is sponsored by VidChops.com. And I do want to thank you, Lee, so much for joining. I appreciate your perspective. It was fascinating talking to you. Always good. I felt like I got some good dating coach energy. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling rejuvenated. And yeah, with that, make sure whatever you're watching this on to like, subscribe, follow, whatever, so that you do not miss it. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.